Good evening, everyone. My name is Darshan Doshi. I'm the founding director for the Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation at Flame University. For those who may not know what Flame University is, it's India's first liberal education institute. We have a very strong undergrad program, a very strong postgraduate program, which includes MBA, MBA in communications. And then recently, we've launched the one-year postgraduate program in entrepreneurship and innovation. Um, I wanted to just kind of get started with this new year, right? 2020 was a challenging year for us all. We got a lot of shocks, not just in the stock market, but even in our lives, especially on the health front. I hope all of you have been safe, have been healthy. Your near and dear ones have been okay too, right? On the other side, congratulations, you made it to 2021. I used to say when we first launched the Founders Talk in July, that our target is to reach 2021 alive. Unfortunately, a few people did not make it. I know a few of my relatives did not make it, but we did, right? And so it is important to know how fragile life is, and we need to respect that, right? Respect it by following the protocols. And we're not over COVID yet. The vaccine is out. Hopefully, it'll roll out in India later this month. And our government is doing all it can to help us out. But we need to do our bit, right? We need to stay safe. We need to follow the hygiene practices and make sure we stay alive and see 2022. I think that's the new target, right? Reach 2022 alive, and I think then take it year by year. All right, so we started Founders Talk series because we thought we have a lot of good people within Flame, within the Flame entrepreneurship ecosystem, such as Dr. Rajkumar, who can provide some value based on their research, their experience, their expertise. And we brought them to you because of the COVID lockdown. We were able to invite them on, on an evening on Zoom call, right? So it has brought us access to people which otherwise would be very difficult to get, and managing everyone's schedules and travel costs and all becomes difficult. So Founders Talk, we've got some good response. I see a lot of people coming back to the Founders Talk. So it's good to see that, and I hope you continue to get benefit of this. In addition to the Founders Talk, the Center for Entrepreneurship also runs an incubator program called the Flame Incubator Program that is open to any student in the world. It's a virtual program we are already running. We've got 67 incubatees going through it right now, but the applications are open for the next one. We also run an early stage startup accelerator program called the Flame Origins program. This is for those who have revenues between 10 lakhs to about a crore. We have had 19 startups go through that program. It's an equity-free, tuition-free program. We require strong commitment from the founders to that program, right? And we help you get revenues rather than only investment, right? So that's the focus. And then the third one, like I mentioned, we've launched a full-fledged one-year residential postgraduate program in entrepreneurship and innovation, applications to which are open. We have 7 fantastic students in the inaugural batch that is going on this year, and we've already received a great response for next year. We've got partners such as Wadhwani Foundation, Babson College. We've got TiE Pune. We've got Campus Fund. All of these are partners who are supporting us to make that program really bring it to a point where it is actionable for people who are saying, I want to give it a year to see whether my business idea has legs. Am I still interested in that business after a year? And am I the right person to build this business? So if these are the 3 questions you want answered, then this is the one PGPI program designed for you. You can reach out to us. I'm just going to put those details in chat so you can reach out if you are interested. Now let's get on to today's topic. Today's topic is very interesting, and I couldn't find anyone better than Dr. Rajkumar. Dr. Rajkumar has also been part of setting up the entrepreneurship department at Flame University. And he's created a fantastic foundation from which we have built on over the years. And I'm really happy that he's come back to support us in our this initiative as well. So I'm really grateful to you, Rajkumar, for joining us and taking this time in the evening. So there are, we all have business ideas. I know I've got a dozen business ideas. Most of them are crap. Some of them are really good. But how do I know which one's going to work and which one I can actually help make it work, and then make a product out of it, then build a business around it, and then, hopefully create an organization that lasts beyond me, right? So I think that's the whole idea behind this. So the very first step is very, very important. How do you evaluate ideas? How do you convert them into opportunities? There's a difference between the two. And that is where I guess Rajkumar is going to share some frameworks and guide us through that process. A quick introduction about Dr. Rajkumar. He's a very passionate entrepreneurship trainer. He's an educator and a lifelong learner. He's been working in the field of entrepreneurship development for the last 35 years at an international level. He's conducted a lot of training programs, simulation programs. He knows exactly what is required if you have to build an ecosystem. He's someone who understands how to differentiate between education, application, and research, right? Very few people are able to do that. And so I'm very grateful for him to join us today. He's worked at various roles. He's been in an education as well as the industry. He's been an entrepreneur himself. He continues to be entrepreneurial himself. And he also serves an advisor to the Toehold Artisans Collaborative, which is a group enterprise of Kolhapuri footwear artisans, and exports its footwear to US, Japan, Italy, Korea, among others. So welcome, Dr. Rajkumar. Grateful to have you here. Without taking any more time, over to you. For all of you, we want to make this interactive. If you drop your questions or thoughts under Q&A section, I'll bring it up to Dr. Rajkumar, and he can help either repeat it, elaborate it, or argue for it or against it, which is good because we want to have a conversation, right? So I think it's not about my way or highway. I think it's about our way, right? So over to you, Dr. Rajkumar. Looking forward to a wonderful session.
Thank you. Thank you, Darshan, for nice introduction. It is always pleasure to come back to Flame. I'm so, because Flame has been one of my very favorite schools where I worked with. I enjoyed those 5 years working with Flame and working with particularly very dynamic and enterprising students of Flame. So, and also, of course, the founders of Flame. So nice that you're taking over from me and really scaling it up to this level. And I'm really proud of you and your initiatives. So thank you and welcome all of you for this session. As Darshan has rightly said, we would like to make it interactive. And even if you want to argue, challenge, and when you challenge, that is when the fun is. When you challenge, that is how we also learn, right? So it is not that I'm going to teach you something. I'm only going to share my experiences with you. So therefore, you have an opportunity to challenge and argue. So that together we can learn a lot, right? So whatever that I have learned in last 35 years working with entrepreneurs, and also whatever that I read about entrepreneurship, I reflected on that, and based on that, this presentation is prepared, which I'm going to share with you. So as the topic says, it is idea versus opportunity. So we'll be discussing what exactly an idea and when an idea can really be called as an opportunity. How do you shape up the idea into a business opportunity to pursue further? Okay. Now let me share my screen with you all. I hope you all can see the screen, right?
Yes.
Idea versus opportunity. Now, the agenda today is I'll start with some critical distinctions that we need to have that understanding before we actually talk about opportunities and the ideas. And then we'll try to see what exactly is an opportunity. When can we say this is an opportunity? Okay. And then what are the different types of enterprises? and then we'll see what are the broad criteria to assess the business opportunities. Then we'll also quickly run through industry analysis, and finally there is an opportunity to share with you my email ID. So if some of you are interested, I have that matrix which I can send it to you. Okay. So this is what is the agenda today. So anytime during the discussion, if you have any questions, please put it under Q&A so that Darshan can bring it to me. Okay. So the key distinctions: ideation versus execution. Now, ideation is generally a very, very creative process. So a lot of people have lots of ideas. As Darshan has said, he has dozens of ideas. Okay. Now, lot of them, whenever I come across with student entrepreneurs or potential entrepreneurs, many a times I come across with people who are very reluctant to share their ideas. So when I ask them, why are you not, spelling out what exactly that you want to do, then they will start whispering and saying, I'm scared that my idea will be stolen. Okay. So it is not the idea. What is more important is the execution. Okay. So ideation is a different process and execution is a different process. So entrepreneurs do not just ideate. Entrepreneurs are not just dreamers. They are doers. And doing requires execution. So you don't have to be scared about somebody stealing your idea, but rather what is important is, will you be able to bring it to the reality? Will you be able to make it a reality, execute it? So that is what is more important. So entrepreneurs are very good at executing the idea. One of my friends, with whom I work very closely, he always says, I get ideas from so many people, but then what I am good at is only execution. This is not my idea, but the way I executed, that made a difference. Okay. So there is a difference between ideation and execution. So therefore, any one of you think that your idea will be stolen, that is a myth. Nobody can steal your idea. So keep on sharing your idea with n number of people so that they will give you lots of inputs so that you can, based on their experiences, which you can refine, you can reshape your idea, and finally you can execute. The next is, whenever we talk of idea, generally the idea is of product or a service. But product or a service is not business. When we talk of opportunity, we are talking about business opportunity. We are not talking about just a product or a service. Idea is always, most of the time it is of a product or a service, but we need to convert that into a business opportunity. So there is a difference between product and a service and business. We are interested in business, right? Then entrepreneur and an investor. Now this is again a very, very important distinction. Now, generally the way entrepreneur looks at the opportunity is different. Entrepreneur's mindset is different than that of an investor. And the investor looks at opportunity is totally different. Today, I'm going to deal in more detail about this. What is an opportunity for an entrepreneur and what is an opportunity for an investor? Okay. So for an entrepreneur, something may be an opportunity which investor may not see that as an opportunity. Okay. So there is a different, when entrepreneur looks at an opportunity, the view is different. When investor looks at an opportunity, the view is different. Then there is a market and industry. What is market? Many a times we use these two terms interchangeably. So market is not same as industry. When we refer to a market, market is a group of existing or potential customers. Whereas industry is a group of suppliers. So when we talk of market, market is a group of customers. And when we talk of industry, industry is a group of suppliers. This distinction we should be clear about. Okay. So market and industry are not the same. And when we are looking at an opportunity, we need to look at both market, how attractive is the market, and also how attractive is the industry. Okay.
Rajkumar, there is one question by Anjali Choksi.
Yeah,
what if you have an idea, but you don't know how to turn it into practicality? So basically converting an idea, but you don't know how to convert it, turn it into a business. basically. Her question is converting idea to maybe a product or a service. I don't know if you're covering that later.
Yeah. We will be, when we talk of various broad criteria to assess, it is basically converting that idea into an opportunity.
Okay.
Covering that, and maybe, we can hold on this question and we'll come back to that little later if she's still not clear.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Now, for an entrepreneur, what is an opportunity? I've tried to make it very, very simple. This is my own way of looking at opportunity. What is opportunity for me or for an entrepreneur is, it is nothing but need plus capability. There has to be a need, and I should be capable of satisfying that need. If these two conditions are satisfied, then there is an opportunity. Now, again, there is a very good research by Saras Saraswati on effectuation. Okay. So initially, when I started, in entrepreneurship, in very, very early days, 30 years before, we used to do something called business opportunity search workshops. So this is when we came up with this definition of opportunity: need plus capability. Where do you really start with? When we say opportunity, it has to be a combination of need plus capability. When I say need also means a problem or a pain point. It is not just need, it could be pain point, problem. Plus, you should be capable of satisfying that, or you should be capable of providing a solution to that pain point or a problem. When these two things are there, then we can say that an opportunity. Now the question comes, as a potential entrepreneur, as a startup entrepreneur, where should I start from? Should I start from capability or should I start from need? Now, this is where generally the first generation entrepreneurs, or even the way entrepreneurs look at the opportunities, they start with capabilities. And that is precisely what the effectuation principle says. One of the principles is bird in hand. Who am I? Whom I know, and that whatever that you have, your traits, you start with that, and then you identify the need and try to fulfill. So the first generation entrepreneur starts with capabilities, whereas when the investors look at, investors' main focus is on the need. If you cannot do it, their focus is more on sectors where there is a growth, which sectors can grow, and then they go on identifying entrepreneurs. Whereas entrepreneur starts with themselves. What is the bird in hand principle? So that's the difference. But together, when we say opportunity, it has to have both. Need plus capability is what is very, very simple definition of opportunity, what I think. Okay. Now, how investors will look at opportunity. Now, if you are clear about this definition of opportunity, then we have different types of enterprises. Most of the knowledge, the recent knowledge or recent science of entrepreneurship that has been developed is mostly influenced by investors community, particularly the venture capitalists. Now, when they talk of opportunity, they always talk of very high growth businesses. They talk of Amazon, they talk of Paytm, Big Basket, fast and big. The enterprises which can grow very fast and also which can grow very big. But if you look at really world over, the statistics says hardly 4% of ventures are funded by the venture capitalists or private equity. Okay. Remaining 96% ventures are funded either by entrepreneurs, founders themselves, or by institutional finance. Okay. So every business, every venture need not have to be high growth enterprise. Okay. But yes, this is very important to understand, because then we can use which are the parameters to assess the opportunity. So there are three types of enterprises: salary substitute enterprises. There may be an entrepreneur who say, okay, fine, I'm happy with this. What is salary substitute enterprise? If you would have worked in some company, okay, you would have earned some salaries. Okay, the same salary, if you are self-employed, if you are able to make out, then that is called as salary substitute enterprises. Many ancillary units which supply, the components to large companies, they work with some companies, then they quit their jobs, then they start supplying some components to those large companies. So mostly these enterprises can be called as salary substitute enterprises, and they are happy with this. Okay. Now these business ideas, such business ideas of salary substitute enterprises may not fulfill the expectations of investors, particularly the private investors. Okay. Then the next is the lifestyle enterprises. What are lifestyle enterprises? Lifestyle enterprises are those enterprises which, if you pursue, you will be able to have a better living. Okay. You may have a very good house, bungalow, your kids may be better educated, go abroad for higher studies. You may have a very good four-wheeler, Audi, BMW, so on and so forth, and you have a very good lifestyle, and that's the end of it. And that is how it continues. Okay. And then we have a high growth enterprises. High growth enterprises are those enterprises which we see nowadays, that is, Paytm, Oyo, or Ola, Uber, or Microsoft, Apple. All these are high growth enterprises which have grown very fast and they've grown very big. Okay. Now, to assess what kind of an opportunity that I am pursuing is very, very important. Okay. And I need to know my motivation as an entrepreneur. Okay. Whether I'm pursuing high growth enterprise, whether I'm pursuing lifestyle enterprise, or whether I'm pursuing salary substitute enterprise. When you are coming up with an idea, entrepreneur hardly thinks about it. Okay. But when the investors look at your business or your opportunity, they will be interested mostly into high growth enterprises. They are generally not interested in lifestyle enterprises or salary substitute enterprises. But we as an entrepreneur need not have to bother about that. As long as we are okay with lifestyle enterprise, it's okay, fine. It can organically grow. It can grow over a period of time. Doesn't matter. Okay. There are other avenues to get funded. Okay. There are institutional finance. Everyone need not have to run after the venture capitalist. Everyone need not have to run after the private equity. Okay. So this is what we need to be very, very clear when we are pursuing opportunities. So that is why at the initial stage only I'm trying to cover these distinct areas of assessing an opportunity. We would know that which criteria and what kind of an enterprise it will lead to. Okay. Now for an investor, now we have seen the opportunity for an entrepreneur. For an entrepreneur, opportunity is need plus capability. As long as there is a need and I'm capable of satisfying it, there is an opportunity and I will pursue it. So that is what Saraswati says. If it is doable, do it. Okay. That's very simple. Okay. But that is not for an investor. For an investor, it is not just doable. It is something more. What is it then? So
Rajkumar? Guys, we're just having some network issues. Just give us a few seconds. Anju, are you there?
Yes, Darshan.
Was it my network or is Rajkumar's
No,
network?
Rajkumar sir's network was a little off. I think he's back.
You want to switch off your video, Rajkumar? Maybe that might work.
okay.
Yeah, just to save a little bandwidth.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. And also repeat the last maybe a minute.
Okay. Yeah. See what for an investor, the definition of opportunity is different. For an entrepreneur, we have seen the definition is very, very simple. It is need plus capability is an opportunity. And as Saraswati says, if it is doable, do it. Okay. But for an investor, it is much more than that. What is that? It is not just creating or adding value for the customer or solving a problem, removing a pain point or meeting a want or a need. This third criteria is very important. It must have a robust market, margin, and money-making characteristics, enabling an entrepreneur and investors to get a share of value. So this is the difference between the way investors look at the opportunity and the way entrepreneurs look at the opportunity. When entrepreneurs look at the opportunity, their way of looking at it, if it is doable, do it. And if I can afford the loss, I'll go ahead with it. Whereas investors will look at the returns. Is there a money-making characteristics? And that money-making is not just small money. They are interested in big money, 10x, 50x, 20x. That is the kind of money that they are looking at. Then only they will call that as an opportunity. Otherwise, for them, it is not an opportunity, which is not the case with entrepreneur. Entrepreneur, if it is doable, he will go ahead and do it. Okay. And finally, have a good fit with the founders and the management team. Again, the word founder, I think must have been brought by the investors again, because we have a very good term called entrepreneur, but they came up with they coined a word called founders. Why founders? Because generally the founders exit the enterprises after a certain time, and then the enterprise is taken over by the bigger companies, or it merged into some other companies. So they are calling it as the founders. So they would like to see the fit with the founders and the management team. So these are the criteria which investors will look at, and that is when they will call this as an opportunity. Right. Okay. Well, now what are the criteria to assess the opportunities? Now the first is customer value. The first thing I need to ask myself as an entrepreneur is, can I sell it? Everything must start with the customer. The business exists because there is a customer. Nobody is going to buy from you because you are a cousin, you are an uncle, or you look very smart, you look very handsome, or sympathy, empathy. That is all very, very short. That's not sustainable. Okay. So finally, your product, your service must deliver a value to a customer. Okay. And if it is delivering the value to a customer, then only you will be able to sell and your business is going to sustain. So the first question that I need to ask myself is, can I sell it? The second is technical feasibility. So can I make it? I think this is where the question, the earlier, somebody asked that question. So how can I make it practical? So that is, can I actually convert that idea into a product? Okay. Is it technically feasible for me to make it? Okay. So that is the next question that we need to ask. And what are the things that we need to look into this? We'll go into the details. And the third is economic viability. Is it economically viable? Can I make a profit out of it? Okay. How much profit? That is different issue, but can I make a profit out of it? Okay. If not immediately, maybe 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line, 5 years down the line, can I make profit out of it? Because it takes time to make profit in any business, right? But for an investor, this profit is not just a small profit. For them, it is 10x, 20x. That is the kind of profit that they look at. Now, these are the first three criteria for an entrepreneur, which are very, very important. And entrepreneurs happy. Yeah, any question?
Kumar, there is one question by Tarun Kohli, which I thought was very interesting. He's asking, can economic viability be assessed without trying in real-time situation? Without putting it out there, can you actually understand and know the economic viability?
If there is a similar kind of a business already in existence, it can. You don't need to try this out. If there is a similar kind of a business already in existence, you don't have to try out the economic viability. It is proved already. There is an economic viability. If it is completely innovative, then you can actually, it's the paperwork. Now, before you actually launch an enterprise, on a paper, you need to see whether it is economically viable. So some of the factors that you need to consider in economic viability, we are going to discuss those in detail. So which you need to consider. And then you will be able to make an educated guess, is it economically viable or not? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you, Rajkumar.
So then the next three criteria are very, very important for an investor. For an entrepreneur looking at salary substitute enterprise or a lifestyle enterprise, these three criteria may not be that important. Okay. So the first three criteria are enough. But if you are aiming at high growth enterprise, where you are expecting the private investors to invest into your business, then what is important is it scalable? Is it sustainable? Sustainable, I'm not talking about the business sustenance. I'm talking about the margin sustenance. Is there a margin money-making characteristics which are sustainable in the long run? Okay. And then the final is the team fit, the founders and the management team, whether that is fit. So these are the three criteria which investors will give a lot of importance. Okay. Okay. Now let's go one by one for all of the first is customer value. Now, what is customer value? When we say customer value, it is basically a perceived value, or in other words, we call it a benefit, right? So what is a benefit? So it is the perceived worth in monetary units of the benefits received by the customers in exchange for the price paid for the product offering, taking into consideration the available competitive offerings and prices. So it is actually the customer's perception. The customers must feel that they are getting far better worth than what they have paid for. Okay. So that is what we call as a benefit in monetary terms. Okay. It is a perception of the customer. So it could be convenience, it could be experience, it could be, it may be beyond the product. Okay. So when we say the customer, when we look at the customer value, we are not just looking at the functional value of a product. We are also looking at the psychological value. We are also looking at the social value. For example, somebody buys a simple, let's say, Maruti car, or let's say a Nano, or somebody buys a BMW. So what is the difference? Functional value is the same. Somebody was to move from point A to point B, right? But then there is a status, right? There is a status there is a social value attached to it, right? So there are many products which, other than the functional value, they provide social value, or there are products which provide psychological value. So when you are gifting something to somebody, so you want that person to feel good about it, So that is what a psychological value that you get, okay, from gifting to somebody. So similarly, when we say value is not just the product. Sometimes, the ease of transactions can be a value. For example, let me share my own example. For 5 years, I was in Nagpur. In Nagpur, you have Haldirams. Haldirams have their own retail stores. Generally, you will get Haldiram products, packed products all over India, but it is only in Nagpur and I think in Calcutta, they have their own retail stores where they fresh milk products also they sell. Okay. But one of the things that time, now they have changed. The problem with Haldirams was they were not accepting the debit card, credit card, nothing. It was only cash payment. So I was not at all happy with the way they deal. I stopped going to any Haldiram stores. So sometimes it is not the product. It is, the ease of transacting with that particular company or that particular business. So all this together will create a benefit to the customer, right? So that is what we need to understand, whether my business, my product is creating a customer value. Now, the customer value in equation, what is the customer value? B is for benefit, or you can call it V. B minus C is the total value created. And B minus P, that is benefit minus price, is what the value to the customer. The customer is paying the price, and in return, the benefit that he is getting is more than the price. Then there is the customer value. There is the value for the customer. And P minus C, that is the price minus the cost of creating that benefit for the firm or the organization or for the entrepreneur. Okay. So this is what the simple equation is. And in a competitive scenario, when there are multiple firms operating in the same space, then whether the value that you are offering to customer is better than the value offered by your competitors. That means B1 minus C1 versus B2 minus C2 will decide the relative value or competitive positioning. Okay. If the competitive rivalry is more intense, then the customer gets better value than the firm. And the competitive rivalry is not that intense, then the firm will get more value than the customer. It's very, very simple. Okay. So this is the first thing that we need to assess. Is there a value that I'm offering to a customer? Now, what are the questions that I should ask to myself? What customer pain point will your offering resolve? What is the pain point that I'm trying to solve? Okay. What is the pain point that I'm trying to solve of a customer? Then will the customers buy what you propose to offer? Are they, I mean, many a times we may feel that it is a customer's pain, but the customer may not be feeling that. Okay. So our idea must have emerged based on our own perception of what is the customer pain point. But whether the customer also thinks in the same way, okay, that is what we need to look into. And then who precisely are our customers? That is where comes the segmentation. Okay, we need to see who are my customers. We should be able to clearly define the customers. And then do we have a detailed, accurate information about who they are, where do they live, what do they do, what business do they do? And then the last question that we need to ask is, are there any other segment that could be also targeted other than the segment that I'm currently targeting? So that will give you, how do you scale it up going forward?
So Rajkumar, there is one question here which was asked earlier, but I thought at this point it made more sense.
Yeah.
In the ideation stage, when you have ideas, you go and talk to people, maybe who you think are prospective customers or your friends, family, professional contacts. And at that point, everybody has an opinion and they tell you, this will work, this will not work, etc. Right? So you get a lot of opinions in the ideation stage and it creates a lot of confusion. So how can one person, understand and differentiate between the signal and the noise, that this opinion I should actually listen to versus this opinion I should not listen to? So any guidelines on that?
Yeah, very good question. So see, generally what happens is the opinions are not same as actions. So customers generally opine something and when they act something different. So therefore, when you seeking opinions, I would call it a market survey. So generally, I don't suggest entrepreneurs to carry out a market survey, but rather what you should be doing is a lean startup. Okay. So have a prototype, workable prototype, and go and straight away launch it and see the customer user experiences. Observe them. Okay. And then see how satisfied they are and go on refining your product as you go along. So without, going and asking everybody and just sharing the idea and seeking their opinion may not work. So what is more important, therefore, is have a prototype and then actually test your prototype. So come up with your minimum viable product and go with your minimum viable product, have some price tag so that you will actually know whether the customers will be able to pay for your product. So the opinion really does not matter much. Opinions, people can give lots of opinions. It's very risky to depend on those opinions. Let me again share here Pune. This has happened in Pune itself. Long back, Darshan, I don't know whether you are aware about. In Pune, I think it was in 87, 88, sometime back. There was a company started, which is still there, which is called as Ruru Chapati. so this company was launched. So before this company was launched, they bought it, heavy machinery to make chapatis and all. The idea was that there is a lot of working population in Pune, both husband and wife both work, and then they don't get time to cook at home. So if the ready-made chapatis are made available, there would be a very good demand. So what this company did, they hired the market research agency and they assigned this work to them. And the market research agency carried out a market survey. So they actually interviewed lots of housewives in Pune. And the result was that everybody was so happy. This was a great idea, if you can get ready-made chapatis, nothing like it. So the result was that there is a huge demand, there's a very good demand, and the company should get into this business. So that is how they launched this company. They started making chapatis, and when they actually started selling, then they realized that housewives are not ready to buy, because those days each chapati was costing 50 paisa, and even paying 50 paisa, housewives thought that it is too expensive. Okay, because housewives never considered their labor into it. They only calculated the cost of the material, the raw material that is required, but they never considered the cost of labor. Okay, but this is an industry, so they have to have a labor cost. So this unit literally failed. Okay, it was a sick unit for some time, but later on they diversified. So instead of targeting it to consumers, they then targeted industries. Now that company is supplying to industries around in Pune. Okay, even Thermax and many other industries, industrial canteens, they buy from this company. So the point here is, many a times the market survey results may go wrong. There is another classic example of Walkman, Sony Walkman. It is the Akio Morita who has written that in Made in Japan. There is a book called Made in Japan. So wherein he has narrated his own experience. When he came up with Walkman, everybody said this product won't work. Okay, but he was very confident. He said, "Let me launch this product," and finally he launched that product, and it became great success. So the point here is that don't just depend on the opinions of the people based on your idea, but rather come up with minimum viable product, launch it, and as you get the feedback from the customers, from the users, go on refining your product so that you will create better satisfaction to the customers. So that is what is my answer to this question.
Thank you.
Hello?
Thanks, Rajkumar. You can go ahead, please.
Yeah.
We have another 15 minutes. So if you can leave the last 5 or 10 minutes for Q&A, that will be great.
Fast. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So then there is who is the customer. This is basically for segmentation. You need to know your customer by age, gender, education, family income. These are various criteria which are generally used for segmentation, but it is for B2C. Customer and consumer are not same. So particularly in B2B businesses, the segmentation would be slightly different. But if it is B2C, this is how you segment your customers. So customer value. So ask these questions. Is there a target market segment in which we offer the customer clear and compelling benefits at a price he or she is willing to pay? And are these benefits in the customer's mind different from or superior in some way to what's currently offered by other solutions? And the last is, how large is this segment and how fast is it growing? Then comes the technical feasibility. Okay, so technical feasibility is basically, can I make it? Can I make that product? Okay, now here you need to see what are the regulatory compliances that I need to go through. Okay, if there is going through those regulatory compliances is easy, whether you get the permissions, licenses, the location where you want to set up a business, all those things you need to check. Then access to technology. This is the very important. Many times we may have great ideas, but then it is very difficult to make that happen because the technology is not available. Let me again share with you this. So once one of the entrepreneur came to me, we have a sugarcane juice. So generally the sugarcane juice is consumed fresh. Okay. So a lot of you will see everywhere, there are particularly in the winter season, you have the fresh sugarcane juice joints everywhere. So people go and consume. But we have orange juice, we have mango juice, all these other juices are available in Tetra Pak and they are available throughout the year. But sugarcane juice is not available generally throughout the year. It is available only in the season. Now, why it cannot be, preserved and provided in Tetra Pak? But that is not possible because the technology is not available. But very recently I came across in Punjab or Haryana, somebody has tried this and they are now started offering the sugarcane juice also. And they came up with some preservative, but till recently such a preservative was not available. But if you start preserving sugarcane juice, it turns out to be alcohol. So whether the technology is available is another thing that we need to see. Like I work with a lot of students which are into technology startups. So they start developing lots of technologies. For example, one of my students is now working on 3D printed concrete robotics. So this is completely a new technology by which the construction cost can be reduced by 60%. Okay. So we need to see whether the technology is available. If it is not, then you need to develop that technology. Or if it is available somewhere, you need to have licenses for that technology to make that happen. Convert your idea into a product. Okay. Then availability of inputs. So you need some raw material, you need power, you need skills, you need utilities. Whether all this material is available, easily available. That is another thing that you need to look into. And the relative power of suppliers of all these inputs, whether it is raw material, power, skills, utilities, and what is the relative power of those suppliers? Like, as you know, currently the farmers are agitating, generally, the agricultural inputs, they need to have a minimum price, assured minimum price. Now, if the industry is dependent on that, again, I remember here a case. There was a company manufacturing and selling orange juice in India called Noga. It was from Nagpur. The full form itself is Nagpur Orange Growers Association. So that is how the brand was Noga. That company had to close down because the farmers who used to supply the oranges, they started, putting conditions that unless the company pays such and such price, they cannot supply the oranges. So they collectively started bargaining with the company. And finally, the company had to be closed down because it was not then economically viable for the company to make it and sell it. So these are again the important things which will fall under technical feasibility. So as an entrepreneur, we need to see whether it is technically feasible to convert that idea into a product or a service. Do we have the technology? Do we have the inputs? And what is the bargaining power of those suppliers? And what are the regulatory compliances? Then the next is economic viability. Again, there was some question on this. So what all do you look into economic viability? So the first is, what are the revenue streams? Some businesses have multiple revenue streams. When I talk of revenue streams, mean in how many different ways the business can get the cash flow in.
Rajkumar, your voice is gone again. Hi guys, sorry, I think we have another network issue. Okay, in the meantime, I'll just take some questions while Rajkumar comes back. Rajkumar, are you back?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now. We're at 7:20. If you can just wrap up in the next minute or so, because we have 4 or 5 questions which I want you to answer.
Oh, sure. 1 second. I'll just finish this slide and then we can take on questions. So then the revenue model is, what is your revenue model? So whether it is a subscription based, whether it is a rentals, whether it is a commission, or whether it is selling of a product or a service. The contribution margin is nothing, but this is what is very important. In There are two types of businesses. One is margin based business, other is a volume based business. So in margin based business, the contribution is very good. Contribution is nothing but selling price minus the cost of goods sold. So that is what is called as margin. And then what is the operating cost? What are the net profit margin? And finally, what is the startup cost? So these are the things which, again, not only entrepreneur, but also investors should be very much interested in. Okay, now let me take on the questions. Darshan, let's take the questions first.
Perfect. You can switch off your slides if you'd like. So here's a question, in case of a business to business, B2B e-learning consulting business, how much time one should spend in ideation versus minimum viable solution? How much should be the time spent between thinking and doing?
It should go simultaneously, I think. It's not that you spend time separately for thinking and doing. So it should go simultaneously. While you think, you start doing it. And then whenever as you get the experiences, go on again, reflect back, think over, and then redo again. So this should go continuously. There is no separate, you first think and then start doing it.
So just from my experience, where I've worked with a e-learning SaaS product that has grown across 29 countries, the product's name is called Adeption.io. My learning is, before you develop the product, you should get the customer to pay an advance, maybe $10,000, $20,000, and then custom build it for that person or that company, and then grow from there. Because it's very easy to say or think I have a better e-learning solution than what's out there. But e-learning is a very tough sell. So you need to be really, really clear how you're going to figure out the distribution problem rather than the product creation problem, right? So I think that's something that you might want to think. Here's a question from Sanjeev Chaturvedi, who's an advisor to the India-Uzbekistan Entrepreneurship Development Center at Tashkent. As many startups shut down between years 3 to 5, how do you sustain and grow the business between 10 to 15 years? So how do you create lasting organizations?
By the way, Darshan, could you just repeat the name of this guy?
Dr. Sanjeev Chaturvedi.
Hi, Sanjeev. Sanjeev, you may not be, I don't know whether you are aware, advisor to India-Vietnam Entrepreneurship Development Center. I think you must be nominated by EDI, Entrepreneurship Development Institute of India.
He won't be able to speak. You can just answer maybe.
Yeah, I know. So he is actually doing the same thing what I did in Vietnam. So good to know that you have joined this. Yeah, the question is, a lot of startups are closed in 4 to 5 years, right?
A lot of startups die within the first 5 years. How can they outlast? How can they live for 10, 15 or more years?
No, Sanjeev, I differ, because if you last for 3 years, you can last forever. First 1,000 days are very, very important. Okay, unless, if we have if you are burning a cash and then your revenue model, your revenue streams are not clear, then you may take a longer gestation period. Otherwise, if you are able to survive for first 3 to 4 years, then I think there is no looking back. You can survive as a lifestyle enterprise. If you are looking at a high growth and
Yeah, looks like we've again lost him a little bit. I'll take the next question. And this one is, what can an investor must do or do not do to support an entrepreneur? I've been fortunate to have worked with various startups, whether it was at Geogen Next. Hi, Rajkumar. Are you back?
Yeah, I'm back. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. So here's the next question, which is what can an investor do or not do to support an entrepreneur?
Yeah, investors should give autonomy to an entrepreneur because ultimately it is entrepreneur's venture. Okay, they can give direction to an entrepreneur, but they should not expect too much from an entrepreneur. So if they expect too much from an entrepreneur, then many a times, this is a lot of stress. And we have examples where entrepreneurs, the ventures either getting into failures or there is a conflict between an investor and an entrepreneur. So investors must give autonomy to an entrepreneur or the founders. They should respect that they are entrepreneurs. I mean, they are not employees.
Perfect. I think that the no couldn't have framed it better. So here's the last question from me. What are the top 2 or 3 things one should do to convert idea to an opportunity? If you can just sum it up, and then we can wrap up.
Yeah. So to convert idea into an opportunity, first is the value proposition. The very fundamental and very, very critical is the value proposition. And the second is it should have a revenue model. It should have a revenue model and revenue stream. So these two things are very, very important. So one, unless there is a customer, no business can survive. Okay. And the second is, it has to be sustainable business. It has to be a business ultimately. So it has to have a revenues.
Fantastic session, Rajkumar. And that is one of the things that we focus on. I've ran and managed various accelerator programs, whether it was for Wadhwani Foundation, for Reliance's Geogen Next, at Flame, the Flame Incubator Origins program, even the PGPI students. What are the first things that I kind of focus and we try to do is get money from customers. Investors, only if you need growth, not for survival, right?
Exactly.
So I think that is very, very crucial. It's been a fantastic session. Thank you all for joining this evening. Next Wednesday, we have Dr. Dishan Kamdar, who's our Vice Chancellor of Flame University. He is a person who's been in various leadership development roles around the world. He is also a person who's been an entrepreneur. He's succeeded, he's failed. He is very open to talk about his failures and his successes. He's someone who we really look up to. He is going to share lessons for leaders. How can you think about leadership? What does leadership mean? What are some of the behaviors, the traits, the routines that you could follow? And also, how do you develop and encourage talent? Right. So that is the focus of the topic. Unfortunately, he's been a little down with his health recently, but he's just promised today that he should be okay for our next session on next Wednesday. So we should be okay to go ahead for the session next Wednesday. In case we are not, we will drop you a note. We will let you know. But I hope you are able to join us next Wednesday for this awesome session. I promise you it's going to be a high energy, high intensity session, because that's a person that is Dishan Kamdar at his best. He brings in a lot of energy. He brings in a lot of cases. He brings in a lot of examples. So I hope you're able to join us for that session. Also, lastly, if you've liked this session, please share it with within your circle who you think can benefit from this session. We want to make a community out of this. If you guys are interested in any of the programs that we do, reach out to us. If you want to apply to our programs, go ahead and then drop me a note. Very happy to have a conversation and explain it in detail. You and I can get on a call whenever you need. All right. So you have a lovely evening. We are at 7:30. I hope all of you stay safe. And again, Dr. Rajkumar, thanks a lot for joining us. Really appreciate and being grateful for you to spend some time and your knowledge and expertise. So we hope to see you again soon. All right, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.